Hey folks, Nev here, and welcome to another episode. Today we're going to be focusing and discussing about inflation or deflation. And before you switch over to another video or podcast or whatever it is that you're into, because I use the D word, let's examine it. Because everybody knows we are in an inflationary period, and of course that's obvious. And you might think, goodness gracious, this guy is an idiot. But let's consider what's going on and why I still think the deflationary period is coming right after this funky inflation that we have. So where are we right now? Of course, you already know that we are experiencing the fastest growing inflation in roughly 40 years. Well, people to say exactly is 39, but you know what? We are at the tail end of that 39, so we might as well just say 40. In October, November, the inflation was just shy of 7%, which is quite high. And I know many people are saying, oh, well, we have a hyperinflation coming in, but that's not where we are. You will know hyperinflation once you experience it. I guarantee it, as somebody who's gone through one, lived through one, and can still live to talk about it. It's not pretty, but there are things that we can do to improve it. Now, before we go and talk about what can we do to help ourselves during this inflationary period, let's just talk a little bit about what inflation is. And I know people say higher prices, and that's just an event that we actually see. It's kind of like seeing the trees move when it's windy, but the trees don't cause the wind. It's an unseen force that we experience within financial markets, where the value of the currency that we have goes down in its purchasing power. But here's something that is very interesting that's been going on, and that is dollar is actually going up relative to the other currencies. Why is that? Well, there are a couple of different reasons. Number one, USD is still the world reserve currency, whether we like it or not. It's just kind of where we are. Number two is that many other people and countries are still borrowing in US dollars and have to pay that debt back in US dollars as well. So what we're seeing right now is really a little bit of different inflation than we would see in somewhere like Turkey, for example, that's been experiencing much higher and much faster pace inflationary forces. Now, the challenge is when we get inflationary forces, well, you have individuals, right? Here we go, that are going to go to some sort of market and they're going to buy some groceries or whatnot. And the challenge is that because the prices keep going up, there's a very good chance that today we're going to increase our purchases so that we can basically put it in some sort of storage. And since we know we're going to use it, it's sort of saying like, well, if I know I eat rice, then I might as well buy a 10-pound bag today, and I can eat it for next 2-3 months, as opposed to buy 2 to 3 pounds every single month and prices going up. So what we might see is that consumerism is going to go up, right? But that is also going to be a pressure on the prices, and so now we're having this sort of a self-reinforcing price movement where the prices are actually going to continue rising, at least in a short-term period. Now, another force that you can also expect to see and experience is that at some point, I don't know what that point is, but at some point, the prices as they rise, similar to kind of what happened with lumber, are going to reach a certain point where the regular consumers will say no mas. I'm not going to buy it, I'm going to delay it, I'm going to switch to something else, or I simply cannot afford to get it. When that happens, prices will undoubtedly have to go one direction, and that is down, and that's that deflationary force that I was discussing. Now, when exactly that is going to happen, I don't know. And I use lumber for a reason. So roughly, 8 months ago, a year ago, lumber prices were going through the roof. Now, they're not back to pre-pandemic levels, right? They are definitely still high, and much higher than they were before, but they are not as high as they got. The prices of lumber, if you will recall, were kind of going like this, right? If this is time and this is the price movement, They were kind of going like this, and then it just went right crazy, and then it sort of topped off somewhere, kind of stayed there, went a little bit, and it's coming down. And again, we're not here, but it's definitely not up here either. And so that's that deflationary force that folks are talking about. This was the expectation that we were going to experience with all other components within the market, which is why they were talking that deflationary forces are transitory. Now, even the Fed is sort of pulling back and saying, not so much. But now that we're kind of understand of where we are and what's been going on, let's take a look at the markets and assets and inflationary sort of hedges that are well known that can potentially help you. Before we do that, I do want to share one more piece that I find very, very interesting. One of the interesting pieces that Fed has talked about is potentially considering raising the interest rates, and they actually might still do that. The challenge is that I don't believe they can, because it creates a problem with US repaying its own debt. And if that's the case, that means that we might go into some sort of default on another financial turmoil, which is not what the administration wants. Not that administration always knows what they want or what they're doing, but that's for another day and for another people to judge. But what might be happening is that if they were to do that, the borrowing could go down, the cost could go, and so we might hit the deflationary period even faster. And I keep saying deflationary, even though we're experiencing inflation right now in this moment. And yes, I don't think it's as transitory as Fed had said, right? It's not something that's going to last a month or a couple of months. It is going to last for a while. I think it might even speed up a little bit more. I think it might even get up. But when I think about longer term period, because of demographics and us still having quite a bit of baby boomers that are still alive and well and doing stuff, and some of them still working, and not in the required retirement sort of pulling back out of the money, right? Like they have to take money out of the account. Those are all the forces that are still coming our way, and those are very deflationary in nature. So it is very easy to understand and see that, yes, we'll hit this inflation piece, and then we're going to start hitting deflation. And unfortunately, I believe that the Fed is going to do the wrong thing again at the wrong time, because all of this printing and everything else that happened was coming in to try to prevent the deflation. And unfortunately, they might have overdone it a little bit because it's a bit hotter than they wanted it to be. So yes, they wanted it to run hot. Well, guess what? It's hot. But I did want to talk about something very interesting that has to do with real estate, and hint, that might be one of the things that we're going to be talking about as an asset force. So let me explain. Let me sort of change places, if you would. So you have over here in 2020 and 2021, right? There is the average price of a new home, not any home, but new home. And believe it or not, the average price of a new home in 2021 is $400,000. It's actually, sorry, not 4,800, $400,800 is the average. In 2020, it was $389,400, which is an increase of 2.9% in the price. So the price has gone up 2.9%. I want you to kind of keep that in mind. The second piece is income. And income, average income in United States was $78,500 in 2020. And $79,900 in 2021, and it went up 1.8%. So the rise in assets, which is what most people have known, the rise in assets has a curve like this. Well, not exactly that, but for visual effect. And then rise in income is looking something like this. And so, of course, this being time and, this being the money axis. So what ends up happening is that as time progresses, this distance between income and asset prices keeps rising, which is highly problematic. And so one of the key components that you look at this, of course, one of the first things you can go and say, oh, well, that's so unfair and we shouldn't be doing that. This doesn't make sense. I don't like it. The government does me wrong. I don't trust it. And that's perfectly fine. I think that that's a fair assessment and fair feeling to have. However, you can fight him, you can cry about it, or you can do something about it. And the key, in my humble opinion, for me and my life, you do what you would want to do, is to actually then just say, well, if that's the case, then what I need to do is I need to obtain some assets. Okay, so what you want to do is obtain some assets over here. You can still keep your income down here, that's perfectly fine, but the key goal is to try to dump as much of your income as you possibly can in assets. And I know you're gonna say, wait a minute. Now, in theory, I get that. I understand. I want to do that, but I can't afford how to do that. So we're gonna be talking a little bit about some strategies in the next few weeks. I'm gonna be sharing hopefully some wisdom, some ideas. One of my favorite ways to invest is in real estate, which you already know, or hopefully likely already know. But I don't like to pay the market price. I like discounts. I am cheap. I don't care. I like to buy, $1,000 suit for $100. I like to buy, $100,000 car for 20 grand. Of course, keeping in STEM the same value within it. And when it comes to investing, I don't want to buy market price anything whatsoever. Not my food, not my clothing, not my assets, not my investments, actually anything, if I can help it. One of the cool things is that there is a way where you can actually get into an asset like real estate, for example. My all-time favorite asset. Yes, I'm crazy about crypto, but I absolutely love real estate for what it can do, and we'll talk strategy in a second. But there's a way that you can actually purchase a house, a property, for anywhere between 20 to 50 to as much as 90% discount from the market value, from the sort of assessed value. Market and assessed are a little bit different, so I misspoke. From the assessed value, so not just market value, but assessed value. And then, you can keep it, rent it, flip it, do whatever you want, and you can have some amazing returns. And I know this because I've done it for myself. I've taught my students how to do it. And if that's something of interest to you, I am actually spending the next few weeks re-recording my most popular course called Real Estate on the Cheap Challenge. That is basically a 30-day challenge teaching you where to find these properties, how to get into them, how to evaluate them, why they're created, how they exist, how to think about the financials, where to find the money. So the whole 9 yards, we kind of go through it and we really dive deep into this topic. And it's 30 days. You get a video unlock every single day. So if that's of interest to you, there's a link in the show notes. And so make sure you check it out. The price is ridiculously discounted right now. And there's a bonus piece that comes in that I will share in next few episodes as we talk about. But it is very, very cool bonus. And it does have to do with blockchain and crypto. So that's all I'm going to say for now. I don't want to give it up. All right. Now, enough of the shameless plugs. So here's what the problem is, right? We've talked about it. Income not growing as fast of a pace, assets growing at an astronomical pace, even something like homes, which is supposed to grow, but not at the pace that it's growing. So why real estate when it comes to inflation? All right, so let's talk about it, how that all works. So you, of course, have a dollar, which does go in purchasing power, right? It goes down. It may not go down necessarily compared to the other currencies because of the reasons we explained earlier in the episode, but it does go down in what it can buy. So, $1, 10 years ago could buy you, I don't know, like 2 cans of soda. And now $1 buys you, I don't know, half a can of soda. Is that a thing? I don't know. I haven't drank soda in years, so I don't know what the prices are. But you understand when you go to a grocery store, you know, way back when you spent $100 on a grocery store visit, you were like, holy moly. Now it's an everyday occurrence. So right, like so the value of the money is not as good. So it keeps going down of what we can purchase with. Now, what also happens and is happening and has been happening and is most likely to happen is, as we talked about, asset prices go up. And real estate is so cool that not only does it go up on average, whatever the inflation rate is, which let's call it over here, inflation rate, let's say 7% is what they told us. If you go to shadowstats.com, you will actually see that that's more likely around 15% plus minus, right? So this is the more actual inflation rate, which means that every year you lose roughly 15% of your funds, which kind of sucks if we're being completely honest. But anyways, so what you want is you need to find an asset that can bring you at least 15% return, only to stay basically at the same level. So this is what you need to stay in equilibrium, right? Equilibrium right here. What you want is something to go up so much that is actually 15% plus. And I would like to grow my money as much as possible, so I would like to go with a 20% plus. So 15% to cover for inflation, 5% maybe to have actually more money. And so, this is where real estate comes in. The crypto is really cool, highly volatile, so it does have a little bit different strategy in my mindset. But real estate, it's especially if it's income producing. That's the key. Income producing, meaning you have a tenant that is going to pay for privilege of living in your asset every single month, which means that you have a cash flow. So you have appreciation. That basically should keep pace with inflation. We've already established that we've been doing that right now. Inflation is 7 to 15%, depending which methodology you subscribe to, and we've been keeping up anywhere between 12 and 20%. That's pretty darn good. Then you have depreciation, which is basically government gives you tax code gives you a right to take off the appreciation piece, which adds an additional bonus here, which also has an impact on lower taxes. So if you can lower your taxes, that means that you get to keep more money at the end of the year, which is another bonus that you get. So let's say you can have an appreciation of, let's go with 12%, which is what we've seen. Depreciation is probably going to be about 3% plus minus. It's really going to depend on your property, and I highly recommend you work with an accountant. Lower tax, it could lower it as much as 10%, but actually even more than that. It just kind of depends. Again, CPA is going to be able to help you. Then you have an income from this property, right? And that obviously is going to depend on whatever the market rate is. But just right over here, I have about 25%, return right here. Then if I calculate the income component where I get some money, that income should hopefully be greater than my mortgage plus taxes plus insurance and plus expenses, right? Should be greater than that so that I still get to keep the funds in. So your income greater than mortgage, taxes, insurance, whatever other upkeep expenses that you have. So those are the key over here. That means that you get some spare cash coming your way, which, hey, more income is much better, especially these days. An interesting piece that also has been happening right now and is going to continue happening is that my marker is dying, but that's not just the piece, is that the rent has been doing what? It has been going up, roughly 10 to 15%, in some areas as much as 20%. Now, there are some areas where it has actually dropped, but those are few and far in between. In most areas, rent has actually gone up and gone through the roof. Sucks if you're a renter, really amazing if you are a person renting properties out. So those are the ways that you are making money. On top of that, here is my favorite thing, which is why I love it. So let me erase this, and this is probably the most important thing that I'm going to say all day long in this entire episode. And that is because of inflation being so high and because of rates being so low, we actually right now have negative interest rates. We don't officially have them, but some people are talking about it now. I don't watch news. I don't watch TV. I don't even own a TV. But my understanding is that more likely than not, given what I do know about media, is that places like CNN, CNNBC, ABC, BBC, and whatever other C that you might have in the sea of the media, they're not talking about it, right? They will say, well, the interest rate is, 0.5%. Or mortgage rates, right? Let's talk about mortgage rates. Average mortgage rate is, 3 point something. Let's say 3.5%. Like, let's be super generous. I haven't checked in a few days, so my apologies for that. But let's say that it's 3.5%. And that may seem really, really high, especially because maybe you saw like 2% or 2.5%, 6 months ago or a year ago and stuff. And yes, the mortgage rates have been going up, but we have negative mortgage rates right now. If you stick with me, I will explain. So this is the current mortgage, right? Mortgage rate. Let me make this better, right? Now, what is the inflation? We just talked about it. Inflation is, they are saying 7%, but we already established that it's 7 to 15%. Okay. So inflation eats our money, which is debt, and I've explained that in a few previous videos. I will do my best to link it to this one, but it's 7 to 15%. So that's the 7 to 15% that basically, like Mr. Pac-Man, ooh, that was actually pretty good, eats those little coins, and there we go, $1 bill. And so he basically eats a bunch of them, and there's more or less on the board that comes in. Well, if inflation is 7% and your mortgage is 3.5%, that basically means that what you borrowed, gets eaten by this, and you are up technically 3.5%, or actually more if you subscribe to shadowstats.com, that inflation is closer to 15% than it is closer to 7%. But even at 7%, that means it's amazing. So this is the reason why for the past couple of years that I've been doing this stuff, I have been talking about you want to get into as long, term borrowing that you can for an asset such as a house. I'm not recommending you should do anything. I'm just sharing with you what my thinking is and how I like to operate. Right? So you want to, as long term as possible, fixed rate. Okay? And so that basically means that no matter what happens on the inflationary front, my fixed rate is my fixed rate. So when the rates drop, I refinance and I get lower rate. When the rates go up, I don't worry about it because guess what? It's fixed. So I don't have to worry about it whatsoever. And, so that's kind of where we are. So long term, meaning that, you have 30 years to overpay, to pay for something right over here. And because it's a fixed rate, and if you got it at, say, 3% or, 2% even, because I know people have gotten 2% last year in the height of all of the insanity, that basically means that you are, still up 4 to 5% on the low end of the spectrum due to the inflation of kind of how the inflationary forces work. About a year ago, 18 months ago, 2 years ago, maybe even, I don't know, time flies when you're having fun. I've done a video sort of explaining what happens with inflation. As I told you at the beginning of this episode, I've lived through hyperinflation. I originally from Serbia, so lived there in the 90s. And it was very interesting to see something. The value of our currency went down so quickly, so drastically, that at the end of the day, because we ended up having a property over there, my parents were able to pay it off with one check when it all cleared. Because the money was worthless because it was, imagine, it's kind of hard to do it in US dollars because we've never experienced it in the dollar terms in the US, but I think people from other places will probably understand it much better. But it's sort of like, imagine that 10 years ago, the same property that you're looking to buy right now or have just recently purchased, or maybe even a property you live in, was for sale for like $1. And right today, like $1, please, like, let me send you 5 of that as a thank you for, sending me a paper. It's worth more. That's kind of what inflation has done for the properties and continues to do. And that is one of the reasons why I'm so very passionate about them. Because not only can I get income and basically make a decent living, great living, excellent living, fabulous living, by doing nothing other than acquiring assets and letting other people use it at a fair value. They get something out of it. I get something out of it. Everybody's happy. And it reduces my financial stress, right? Which is where the Money Blast Life kind of came from as an idea. It gives me freedom. It gives me stability. It gives me ability to do all kinds of cool stuff. And of course, if you do more of it, that means you have multiple streams of income. So if one dries up, it doesn't matter as much. Appreciation, because it appreciates in value, you buy it, you hold it long term, your payments more or less stay stagnant, right? Because we talked about the whole fixed rate, while the income that comes in keeps going higher, the value keeps going higher. When the rates drop, you have a potential to refinance if you want to, cash out refinance, meaning you get money out without paying taxes because you're borrowing. It readjusts the payment. Hopefully you've done the math. Everything works out. You have an influx of cash that you can go and maybe acquire another asset or go on vacation or do whatever you want to do, maybe start another business or whatever it is. You have the depreciation, which also has a good positive force on lowering your income taxes, and so you pay less at the end of the day. And that is how and why the rich keep getting richer. Now, some of them are cheating, that's fair, but that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is using the knowledge and the forces around us to benefit us. So I hope you have learned something. If that is the truth, please tell everybody else about it. Hit the subscribe, the like, the whatever else buttons, and I will see you in the next